What are some scary examples of history is written by the victors? There is a bunch of Chinese history that is pretty much speculation because whenever a new king would conquer places, pretty much the first move was always to burn all the records and kill the historians to establish dominance. The Philippine-American War. Because of World War II, the Americans were portrayed as heroes who had the Philippines' best interest at heart. But few people know about the genocide during the Philippine-American War that started in 1899. Almost 200,000 civilians dead, with civilians dying to disease, famine and US troops wiping out villages. Pretty much any indigenous population that got in the way of any colonial power. No single country has a monopoly on the violence and oppression that was done worldwide as the colonial powers expanded. All were guilty of it. Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Carnegie, Astor, Mellon, Morgan, Schwab, Stanford, they were called robber barons for a reason. All those schools and music halls and community centers are all built on the backs of crushed men and named after the men who crushed them. WW1. Germany especially are always seen as the bad guys, and in Western films like Wonder Woman for example, that's especially the case. But in truth the war was far more complex than that, and so there wasn't a clearly defined good versus bad like WW2. In WW2, the American/British Bomber Command killed some 600,000 German civvies. The US Bomber Command encouraged something called area bombing in large civilian centers with firebombs which they supplied to British Bomber Command. Many of the pilots were informed that they were bombing important railways/roads/military/industrial targets, and felt something wasn't right when bombing cities like Dresden. America didn't lose a single civilian to German bombers, and Britain lost 60,000. That's 1 out of 10 the amount they killed in their combined bombing campaign. The Treaty of Versailles, or how the war to end all wars didn't end no war because of France and also UK, Italy didn't get invited, not was given the land they were promised, the Arabs, you know those who fought alongside Lawrence, didn't got the independence they were promised, Germany got away to violent punishment, asked by France, that caused the misery of the 20s in Germany and brought you know who to the power. I'm French, and I wasn't taught all this in school, I had to search. Afterwards. The leftist political beliefs of a lot of great people in history have been completely erased because it's capitalists that are writing the history books. Albert Einstein and Helen Keller both held leftist political beliefs, but you never hear about it. The burning down of Nalanda University in India by Muslim invaders and also Taxila University. The brutal killing of educated monks and burning thousands of old scriptures to destroy the roots of many ancient knowledge. The Gallic Wars, probably more of a genocide than anything else, frequently involved the Romans slaughtering civilians. Decent summary here, modern historians believe that Gallic forces were far smaller than the Romans claimed, and that the Romans suffered significant casualties. Historian David Hennig regards the entire account as clever propaganda meant to boost Caesar's image, and suggests it is of minimal historical accuracy. The Gauls didn't record the events, so we don't know their side of the story. Every time the US has gotten involved in Latin America. The atomic bomb was necessary to stop World War II. Moguls in Indian history are very much dominating, and main reason is the North-centric mindset. There were many great kings in south side of the India, but hardly they are talked about. No consequences for USSR war crimes. I live in Germany and I'm an architect. And a lot of the old buildings and churches I have visited so far have been rebuilt after being completely leveled. Some are left as is, to become a memorial. The place I live in is a UNESCO heritage site because it was rebuilt after being completely destroyed by the Allied air raids. The Indians taught us to grow corn, winking face. Thanksgiving. Anything the Brie*ish did ever. What European colonization did to the natives of the North, South and Central Americas. The Armenian genocide being denied by Turkey. The Bible. How Israel is annexing Palestine and claiming, today, that Palestinians are the invaders. William the Conqueror was the Duke William before and during. He had a deal from the King of England's successor that William would have the throne if the king died. The king died and the successor went back on his word and took the throne. England wanted the successor anyway. So Duke William gathered his men and conquered England. To the English he was a conqueror, but to William he was taking what was promised to him. Literally all of it, dude. American history. Afghanistan once used to be a peaceful region that followed Buddhism to the core. Not even Afghans know it today. Winston Churchill being considered a hero in the West after he murdered millions of Indians. Christianity is the most popular religion on earth and is seen as the religion of love, all because the Europeans were really good at genocide 1,000 years ago.
The Old Testament. Ask the Canaanites.
That humans destroy the earth since animals/plants don't have a voice for themselves.
Not sure if this counts, but I was taught that America won the Vietnam War. Actually, it does count because America is always the victor in America.
The state of Israel is slowly but surely committing genocide and war crimes against Palestinians. History is being written as a complicated political situation. It's not complicated.
It's ethnic cleansing. The Iraq War. There were no WMDs. America not owning up to her war crimes.
Everything in the book A People's History of the United States, and books alike for each continent. Ethnic appropriation, like Arabs taking over the Middle East and North Africa and now claiming, for example, that they are descendants of the pyramid builders or that they are native to Judea. Winston Churchill being a heroic person. Most of the Islamic history really. We barely about Arabia's history before Islam. And when the Muslim rulers conquered other areas like North Africa, they erased their cultures and thus spreading the religion with violence. A lot of these countries were Arabanized.
Britain, WW2. Most of it is written by us.
We, the singular, wrote it to the extent that we wrote out the others who actually won. Most of our most famous acts were not ours.
The Battle of Britain was mostly fought by Polish pilots.
The Polish also stole the Enigma machine, the thing that made Turing's work possible.
Russia contributed the most in human souls. New Zealanders won the Battle of Crete. I could go on.
The history of Native Americans, savages, from the day Christopher Columbus discovered America. So many broken treaties, so many lies by Christian white men. The War of Northern Aggression, wait, no, that's history written by the losers. That the USA and USSR did also war crimes in the WW2 and no one knows that. The prevalence of unquestioned Christianity around the world in spite of the fact that Christians have spilled more blood and destroyed more lives in the name of their deity than any other group has throughout history.
2020 election fraud. America.
The history of the United States taught to K-12 students and in some universities equals Kool-Aid.
MT Rushmore. American exceptionalism, manifest destiny. USA propaganda all around.
It's funny to me how ingrained in your brain is Soviet bad. Every price of history you've ever learned grinning face with sweat.
I don't know much history.
Every bit of historical erasure of the LGBT by straight historians claiming they were just friends or just roommates.
The idea that communism is a valid ideology.
If the Soviet Union had collapsed during WW2, there would be no distinction between communists and fascists today.
Most of US history? Americans, stay out of this one. This is for winners. America, I hate that it can be a one-word answer to this question. The extermination and relocation of Native Americans.
Our history has been almost completely wiped away from history, and our people are now almost extinct. How if 9/11 happened anywhere else besides maybe Britain? No one would give a 25th of a care. Maybe not exactly writing history, but leading to more history being written.
Everything about Israel post-World War II.
There have been so many deaths and conflicts that were a consequence of those decisions.
Honestly, it doesn't seem very well thought out in retrospect.
I would tell you, but then the CIA would shoot me. Anytime USA spreads freedom in resource-rich countries.
Well, for some reason no action of the US Army counts as a war crime. War crimes is a thing that others do. Ever read about what wars the Rothschilds have backed and started?
Stalin, Mao Zedong, both killed much more people than Hitler, but no one cares, as they won and are on our side.
Native Americans plus most of Middle East that was conquered by France, Italy, Spain and British PPL, they did bad things to the country and it's PPL will still suffer from it now, but soon the black flags should unite us again and the rise of the caliphate will follow. The UK?
America is a recent example.
Iran's democracy being overthrown by US and the UK, the present boastful advocates of democracy.
Soviets are evil for manufacturing a famine. UK can manufactures famine because we're thr good guys. The Tokyo trials, in which the US-led military tribunal decided there wasn't any need to discuss the atomic bombings of civilian cities in determining who had committed war crimes, and to what extent. Most of their case hinged on going after individuals for actions that were not actually illegal at the time the crimes were committed, while absolving those who were useful to the US of any wrongdoing. The whole thing was a farce. Anything recorded, promoted, or published by organized religion. Napoleon was tall for the time he lived. Republicans fighting CRT, they won't succeed. Sometimes history needs to be written by the victors to detail the terror they overcame. History written by the losers usually goes like this: I was just standing there, minding my business, and they came and beat me up and took my stuff. Rarely is that the actual case. Sort of a stretch, but WW2, America claimed to have been the sole reason they won, when in reality the Soviet forces made an impact twice as large. They would by no means win the war as fast as they did with help from America, but it's not like America was the sole reason for victory. Examples of this are war-changing battles such as Battle of Stalingrad. White people as a whole edit Reddit babies calling me racist then deleting their comments. LMFAO, I'm not wrong. Pretty much all of US history. It is entirely within the realm of possibility that Trump wins the 2024 election. If he does, then there will be no limit on his kleptomaniac psychosis. History will be rewritten like you won't believe. How the North American history books make it out like they were the good guys and acted with honor in World War II. Look at what conservatives are attempting to do with R/T, what they call CRT. The murder of Osama bin Laden. Uvalde, as the most recent tragic example. Most secure election in history, yeah. Okay. Winston Churchill killed more people than Hitler. I think it's little known about, but Bolshevik POWs killed in captivity during Polish-Bolshevik War would be an example. They were invading forces, but still. The worst ones we don't know. Trail of Tears. How about Spain's decimation of pre-Columbian life? I'll tell you only this: African colonization. American execution of Italian soldiers after the fall of Sicily during World War II. I mean, the United States got away with nuking two cities too. Everything about Cleopatra, Mark Antony, Fulvia, and basically any other opponent of Augustus/Octavian. Allied and Entente war crimes, such as Canada taking no prisoners. Columbus is widely seen as a hero. USSR actually started WW2 on the same side as Germany, but was not showing it during lots of years after the war. I don't know if this counts, but when I read the question I think of the Siege of Melos. WW1 and 2 in American history books. America in general. Not really scary, but Napoleon was like 5 feet 10 inches. Manifest Destiny, Mexico, Russia, France, US, outlying islands, Puerto Rico. The British Empire. History is written by historians. Basically all of American history. All of it. Always. The Catholic Church. The US's interpretation of their role in WW2. Started in the late 80s after decades of the Cold War and people's movements being crushed all over the world, there is no alternative to capitalism. The history of the United States. WW2. The way the English still teach history to this day, except don't actually teach anything true or useful. The whole history curriculum in British schools. Egypt now is a good example. Ask most of the countries in the Middle East. Yes, but after a few months they got settled with just the 4 of them and done in English. They even had no note takers. However, the 4 kept forgetting what was said, so they brought in a couple of civil servants to record what was said. First one was British and wrote very formal notes, of course he did, then he was joined by a French and Italian who both included the little snide remarks as well. Source: The Peacemaker's 6 Months That Changed the World, Margaret Macmillan. America, Columbus, 'tis a white man's world in the States far too often. All of them? Geneva Convention. Allied war crimes in both world wars. Especially the returning of refugees to Soviet Union, which meant forced labor at best and slow death at worst. The sentence we gave civilization to the colonized country.
Grinning face with big eyes. Spain. Every war ever made.
Every history book on the founding of the US taught in American public schools. Don't know if this counts, but it always starts fights with my American family. America has lost some wars before. One to Vietnam and one to Canada, but every time I mention this to my American family, they always say we didn't lose, those were stalemates. If an invasion is negated, I guess they were taught that was a tie. I could never convince them that in Canada we were told that's a loss.
The Odyssey plus the Aeneid, the two sides of the Trojan War.
I mean, the entire westward expansion of the United States was a slow-burn genocide that led to the utter destruction of thousands of unique cultures, but we still think of the Founding Fathers as heroes and the pioneers who invaded and conquered the native lands of sovereign people as brave adventurers.
Removed by Reddit. History itself. European war crimes or crimes against humanity in its colonies.
Especially Brescia's. Something I noticed about my history textbook was during the chapter on the troubles it ends at the Good Friday Agreement.
It doesn't mention the Omagh bombing at all, nor did the teacher. Colonialist history. No one mentions Puerto Rican atrocities by the US. All of ancient history is what we get from what the winners wrote.
The post-war division of Europe between the Allied and the USSR. My relatives have pictures taken with Allied/American soldiers in Hungary, taken in the last weeks of the war.
They withdrew and gave my country to the Soviets.
History states the Allied never reached Hungary and the Soviet Union conquered us first. There's an island alongside the continent in the south of Brazil, where I live. It used to be called Desterro. Then one day, people decided to rebellion against a tyrannical government in the late 1800s. At one point during the warfare, they sought shelter in that one island, Desterro, where the rebellion was completely dismantled and repressed by the then dictator president of Brazil, Floriano.
That island is called Florianopolis to this day. Literally everything we know now is written by the victors with their views. You see.
Dead and lost ones really never got a long screen time to be in the history, which basically made communism evil and other political things we think is normal and justified.
Jesus is now represented by people in fancy clothes, pedos, and so on.
Literally, our present is the example. The Cherokee left willingly for Oklahoma for the free land provided by the government. Obviously anyone with a brain knows about the Trail of Tears, but the fact they're putting stuff like this in history books now.